This is video number 2 of the Getting Started series for the Solar System Crochet Along project, the Solar System Blanket. In this video, we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit about color changes and working joined rounds. Now, you recall in video number 1, we talked about continuous rounds versus joined rounds, and we mentioned that most of the rounds in the blanket pattern are going to use the continuous spiral method. A few of those, however, are going to be joined rounds instead of working in that continuous spiral, and so that's what we're going to talk about in this video. To do this, you're just going to work your piece, in the round as normal using the continuous spiral method. You can see we've got a piece kind of worked up here, and it's a little spirally, and we're almost done. The stitch marker here marks the first stitch of our round. So you can see this is round 10 of the solar system blanket. And you can see that we're just about finished with this round. So to show you a joined round, all we're going to do is finish up this round here. I've just made my last increase for this round. So I'm going to go ahead and take my hook, put that back on my hook. I'm just going to work the remaining 8 stitches here in half double crochet just to finish up this round, and then I'll show you how to join it. Now again, this is just worked in half double crochet, pretty straightforward, and I'm just finishing up round 10. When we get to the end of round 10 here, I'm going to show you a couple of things. I'm going to show you how to make a color change, because we're at a point where we're getting ready for a color change. And I'm also going to show you how to join the round, okay? All right, so that's the last little bit there of round 10. Now I'm ready to think about my color change for round 11, and I'm ready to start thinking about that join as well. What I'm going to go ahead and do, and I apologize if these clatter around a bit, they like to do that. What I'm going to do before I do the color change is I'm going to go ahead and join this right here. I'm going to start the join anyways. I'm going to take my hook and I'm going to insert it into this first stitch of the round. You see that blue stitch marker? That's the first stitch of my round. So I'm going to go ahead and insert my hook through there, just like that. And now I'm going to go ahead and do my color change, okay? I'll show you this a little bit more too. We've got another color change coming up, but I'm going to go ahead and take this yellow yarn here, snip that, move it out of the way so it doesn't tangle up anything else. There we go. Alright, so you can see I got my tail end here. I left a nice long tail for sewing later on. I'm going to go ahead and complete this join now. And to do that, all I'm going to need to do is grab my blue yarn. Looks kind of black in this video, it's a dark blue. I'm just going to go ahead and put this yarn on my hook like so. Right? Just like that. Whoops, there we go. And I'm just going to pull this blue yarn through the loops on the hook, okay? Through every loop on the hook. Just like that. And that's how you do your join, okay? That's basically going to be a slip stitch. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and prepare myself. We did the color change. I'm going to go ahead and prepare myself for round 11 of the solar system blanket, okay? To do that, I just need to chain 2. And then I'll just keep going per the pattern instructions for round 11. Now, I should mention that, what was I going to say? Oh yes, okay. So I should mention that when you're doing the joined rounds, anytime you join around here, you're going to go ahead and join with a slip stitch like we did here, and then you're going to work the number of chains indicated on the pattern. I've written it out so it will tell you when to change your yarn, when to join with your slip stitch, and how many to change whenever you need to do that. So unless you see in the pattern, unless it says join and chain, you're just going to work in the continuous spiral method. If it says join and chain in that round, you're going to go ahead and do the joined method here like we've shown. To go ahead and get started with round 11, I'm just going to work, and this is a little tricky because I got a lot of stuff in this first stitch here. I'm going to work my first increase in round 11. Just half double crochets. There's 1, and there's 2. Now at this point, I'm ready to go ahead and put a stitch marker here to mark the beginning of the round. So I'm just going to pull that out a little bit. I'm going to take my blue stitch marker. Blue is the color I'm using right now to indicate the first stitch of the round. I take that out, and I'm going to move the stitch marker up every row as we go, and it's always going to go in the first stitch of the round. I'm going to go ahead and just put that into that first stitch. Again, it's kind of hard to see because it's dark blue. I'm just going to put it in there like that, close it up, and there we go. So that's my first increase there. Now, we'll talk about this a little bit more with video 3, but I'm also going to go ahead at this point and insert another stitch marker in the same spot to indicate my increase for this round. Last round I used purple. This round I'm going to go ahead and use these lime green ones. So again, I'm just going to insert this into the same stitch, just like so. Oops. Sometimes it goes in. There we go. And close that up. Now you can see my first increase. I've got the first stitch of the row marked. I've got the increase marked, and we're good to go. Now round 11 says to do an increase, and then you're going to half double crochet in each of the 9 stitches coming up. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to skip over this little stitch marker. We've already worked in that stitch. If you spread this out, you can see that we've already worked our increase into that stitch. So I'm just going to slide it over to the side. I'm going to ignore this right here. This is that stitch. It's kind of hard to see, but you can see the stitch marker going through that. So I'm going to skip those loops. That's the first stitch basically. Okay? So I'm just going to go ahead and work in the next stitch to do half double crochet, and we just need 9 of those. There's 1 and 2, 1 and 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm going to fold this back up so it stops rattling. 6, 7, 8, and 9. And there we go. So we're going to basically repeat that section there all the way around. So increase and then 9 half double crochet, increase and 9 half double crochet over and over again. And I'm going to go ahead and just talk to you a little bit while we do this here. I kind of want to get us to a point of the color change. It's another few rows though. But I should mention that there are several types of rounds in this blanket where you're going to be using this joined round method instead of the continuous spiral method. And you're going to use this method anytime you're going to do a color change. So like right here, we did a color change at round 11 here, right? So anytime you do a color change, you're going to do a joined round. That round is going to be a joined round. Also, the round right before that color change is going to be a joined round. So that's why we joined this yellow yarn here instead of doing the continuous spiral. We joined it there and then chained with the blue. So anytime you have the color change round, the round right before it, those are both going to be used, they're both going to use the joined round method, okay? The other thing to note is that the round immediately following that is also going to use the joined round method. It's a little bit easier to see when you have the orbits and everything going on because you have one round of orbit to look at instead of just, a block of yellow and a block of blue like we'll have here. But just kind of keep in mind anytime you're going to do a color change, the color change row, the row after it, and the row before it all have to be joined rounds. And what that's going to do is it's going to let your color changes meet up at a nice even spot so that you don't have like a spiral of color ending. Okay? If we had done a continuous, if we'd used the continuous spiral method right here before we did our color change, then that yellow would be hooked up right up next to the blue there. And you wouldn't have that kind of jump. So that's going to make it look like your yellow is right up against the blue. And that doesn't really look like a nice even color change. So the reason why I decided to do the color change row and the row before and after in joined rounds is to kind of make that nice and even, and it'll give the illusion of having your circular blanket. Even though it's mostly worked in the spiral, your color changes won't look like they're in a spiral, okay? It's written out a little funny in the pattern, but if you just follow along the pattern, it'll walk you right through it, and it'll let you know when to do the joined rounds. And again, just ignore it doesn't say any, not ignore, I'm sorry. It doesn't say in the pattern to do joint or to do continuous rounds. It's just kind of a default. It's assumed. So unless it says to do a joined round, you're just going to assume that it's going to do a continuous round, okay? All right, I'm still going here. Because this has taken a while, I think I'm just going to do the next round. And we'll change colors again so you can see it, okay? Speeding it up a little bit. This is already getting too big to fit in view of the camera, so this is going to make some noise as I crochet along, so bear with me. Getting closer. So yeah, basically, things to point out. You'll want to keep that in mind when you're working on the pattern. Anytime you do a color change, that should be kind of a red flag for you. If you have a color change coming up, make a mental note. The row before has to be done in a joined round. The row of the color change, joined round. Row after the color change, joined round. In the case of the orbits, you might have, for instance, when you change to the orbit color gray, you're going to end up having that round be a color change round. And then you're going to change the next round immediately into the blue again, because the orbit rounds are only one row thick. So you're going to have, two color change rounds back to back. So just follow that same rule. The color change round and the rounds before and after are all done in joined, joined at the beginning here with the slip stitch. Okay, I'm on my last increase here. And I apologize, I totally forgot to put in those green stitch markers. That's okay, we can kind of see it here. Okay, I'll show you this join here. I'm just working up to the end. So yeah, just keep going as you've been going. Work all the way up to the end of that round. There we go. There we go. Okay, a lot of stitch markers here. I'm going to take the green one out because it's kind of in the way and hard to show in the video. Okay, so here we are at the end of round 11, and we're ready to go ahead and join to the beginning here with the slip stitch. So we'll go ahead and do this. I'm going to show you another color change here. Round 12 in the pattern is not a color change round. You would still work round 12 as a joined round. This is round 11. We're finishing it as a joined round, okay? I'm going to go ahead and just insert my my hook right here. And then I'm going to go ahead and pull out some gray here from the side. It's not cooperating. There we go. And put that on my hook. Goodness, I'm sorry. What hobby is this? There we go. Got it on my hook. And I'm just going to complete the join by pulling that gray through to form that slip stitch. Now you can see that got a little bit loose there. That's okay. You can pull on the tail end to tighten it later. And then you just go ahead and chain one for the orbit rounds. The orbit rounds are worked in single crochet, which is why you're chaining one. The void rounds in blue are worked in half double crochet, so you're going to chain two for those. But for the orbit rounds in gray, chain one. The void rounds, chain two in blue. And then you would just keep going, just remember to move your stitch marker up as you go. You're just going to join, most importantly, the color change rounds and the rounds before and after that color change round. Those are the ones that you're going to do this joined method with, okay? And you can see with our blue here, there's my tail, my working end. You can see how nice and neat that color change is right there, right? Move that stitch marker out of the way, move that one out of the way. So you can see our yellow kind of stops and it's a nice neat circle, even though all of this was worked in a continuous spiral. And you can kind of tell it's just slightly higher here, just a teeny tiny bit. But because we worked that row before our color change in the joined method, it shrunk it up a little bit, it forced that down a little bit so that we could work our chain two for the blue and make that a little bit taller and make that blue color wrap all the way around and meet itself in a nice circle. Same with the yellow. By doing that, it made the yellow work all the way around and join itself in this nice, neat circle instead of being way up here. And so that's kind of an introduction to the idea of doing joined rounds. There are lots of other videos online, on the internet, on YouTube, on how to join when you're working in the rounds. If you need additional help, I recommend checking those out. But that's kind of an introduction to color changes and joined rounds for the sake of this solar system blanket.